So I'm very happy to introduce David Berge, Vancitys' first Senior Vice President of Social Finance. Very good to hear this. David is president and founder of, you'll like this name, Underdog Ventures, a company which creates and manages customized community venture capital funds, integrating socially responsible investment, community investment, and philanthropic components. Underdog Ventures was recognized as one of the 10 U.S. financial institutions providing especially strong benefits to the environment. Through his previous consulting firm, he's advised high net worth individuals and social venture institutions while providing 1/3 of his work on a pro bono basis for community development organizations. Previously, David was the director of Vermont National Bank's Socially Responsible Banking Fund, which he grew from $38 million to $208 million US in targeted deposits, and was the senior loan officer at the Institute for Community Economics, an organization that some of us know from a long history. He's chair of the Underdog Foundation, as well as an advisory board member of UltraShare Securities, a board member of Mission Research, and a member of the Financial Innovations Roundtable, Social Venture Network, and Social Investment Forum. We are very happy, David, to have somebody with your background and now being here in Canada with us today. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm really proud to be here today in front of you. And I was thinking a bit last night about what it means to be a part of a people's-centered economy. And I like to think that one of the things that it means is that your ownership matters, and who you are matters. And so I thought about that a bit this morning. And most mornings I think a bit about that as I walk into my office now at Vancity and think that 415,000 members are our owners. You know, it's a different sort of management system for us. I'm proud to say that we have a woman CEO, that most of our managers are women, most of our board members are women, and as I look around the crowd here, also proud to be so far from home and see 2 of my own board members here in the crowd today. So. You won't see that with a lot of large financial institutions. So for me, it's a little daunting to be representing a group with Vancity with such a colorful and long history. In 1946, people know that Vancity's been around for a long time. It's not as broadly known that in 1946, 22 families got together in the downtown east side where it was very difficult to get any sort of financial services. And together they made a cooperative credit union. Those 14 families had $22 in assets to start the organization. That first year, the organization made just under $1. It took us almost 20 years to get to the first $10 million of assets. So this is hard work, it's long work, there's a lot of mistakes along the way, and I'd like to say that that changes. Unfortunately, that doesn't change, of course. When you get bigger, the mistakes just get bigger. The work continues to get more challenging and more engaging in a lot of ways. So with that bit of background, let me launch in a bit with reading glasses in the glare here today. So where are we today at Vancity? We've now grown from that first $22 to $14.5 billion. 2,400 employees, and we're proud to have been the first carbon neutral financial institution in North America in 2008. This year, in order for us to hit our targets, we'll need to make $2.4 billion of new loans in fiscal 2010. So that is indeed a challenge. I think, though, the thing that's different about that is that at the end of the day, when I sit with the other senior managers and when we sit with our board of directors, the question that is not ever asked is, can we be the biggest organization? The question that is asked consistently is, can we make the big difference? And that's always the tension, right? Can you scale and still have impact? And it's something we struggle with and we look at. We realize that there are some things you cannot do at scale and profitability, but there are some things that you will always choose to do because they are important. We're lucky that at the end of every year, we're able to distribute 30% of our profits to our members, including our community members as well as our owners. So what's new at Vancity now? I was introduced as the head of social finance. One of the big changes in the last few months is that we have renamed our social finance division to be community investment, to be inclusive of some of the broader parts of the social finance world as well. And we've made a commitment. One of the commitments that we've made is to try to challenge ourselves. We were proud, and rightly proud, to say that we could distribute our 30% of profits every year. But we started asking over the last couple of years a very challenging question, which is, what is the maximum amount of that $14 billion that we could lend and invest within the social economy? So it's nice to be making mortgages to families, and it's nice to be making commercial real estate loans, but as we look toward community investment in social finance, we're challenging ourselves to say we need to build an institution that gives the maximum amount of our time and attention, the maximum amount of our skill into the communities that we most care about, that are most consistent with our member owners. So that's been a challenge for us, and it's a little bit of what I'll talk about in the last part of the chat today. One of the challenges that brings up is it means we can't just look at the last 5 years and say, how can we get better, incrementally better in the things we've been doing? Instead, we have to look 5 years forward and say, what's the Vancouver, what's the lower mainland BC that we're going to be seeing 5 years from now? And how can we build an organization over the next 5 years that will meet the world that we're going to face? And what do we see when we look ahead? There's a couple of things that I found really interesting in the last year. So I don't know how many in the crowd are from BC today. Oh, that's great. It's a good number. But for those of you that don't spend quite as much time in BC, in some ways we've come full circle since 1946. In BC today, looking at Vancouver, including Burnaby and Surrey, if you look into the school system, in the junior high system, 76% of the children in junior high have one or more parent born outside of Canada. 76%. So what is the adult population that will be our new members? That is the adult population that we're building for. When we as an institution talk to economic advisors, like many big businesses, we're told you can't grow in the world economy unless you really look at China and you look at India. These are growth economies. You know, BC needs to look at India and look at China. And I'm not saying that there's not truth to that. They're huge economies. But the fact of the matter is that the biggest growth economy in the next 5 years is not China, nor is it India. It's the women's economy. In the next 5 years globally, women's earnings will go from $13 trillion to $18 trillion. That is more than twice the size of the net growth of the China and India economy combined. So when we go to work in the women's economy at Vancity, we have to challenge ourselves that it's not about painting a computer pink and giving it a blog site. Thanks. So we're seeing, as a part of that, we have some challenges, right? Because there's also, you have to look at this being a sophisticated group of women borrowers in a lot of ways, and not a uniform group of borrowers. What we're seeing is aggregation of wealth amongst women in different buckets. We're still seeing women, which is good news for part of the crowd, but not all of the crowd, outliving their male partners. So aggregation of wealth in the last 10 years of life. And the women in their 70s, 80s, and 60s have different issues of concern, some that cross over, but not every issue that crosses over with our younger women members. And we're seeing women in their 20s and their 30s that are getting closer and closer, thank God, to pay equity, but not there yet, but still aggregating wealth at a much earlier time in their lives. And so as we look at strategies to address that part of the economy, it's going to take some not easy thinking to really look through those issues. We look forward to the next 5 years and we see increasing issues of food security and of water issues, of course, as many of you do. We see continued challenges with affordable housing and nonprofit organizations still struggling for funding. And not just struggling for funding, but struggling for funding in a time in Vancouver. I have just moved to Vancouver in the last year. And the first time I went to look at a house, they showed me 3 first houses. And the second of the houses, which was $1.3 million, I'm embarrassed to say, they told me the reason it was such a good price was that it was obvious that it would be torn down in order to build a nice house on the piece of land. How do we get our heads around working on homeless housing issues and perpetually affordable housing issues in cities where they are tearing down $1.3 million houses in order to build a house? We see growing needs for social ventures and social enterprises. And so for us, it means we've got to find a way to put multiple pools of capital together, like most of you, under a single mission. So we've done the work in the last year at Vancity to make sure that our pools of strategic philanthropy, which is now mission-based philanthropy, our pools of patient capital for social enterprises, our pools of conventional business debt and real estate debt, our mezzanine capital, and our venture capital will be all applied to a single set of missions. It means we have to put our best people, not our worst people, off the side of the desk working on these issues. And it means that as we do our proof of concepts in each of these lending areas, we have to be ready to scale where we can because the need is urgent. And we're living in strange times, and I don't want to spend much time on the global economy because we're really short on time and we want Q&A. So 3 quick fact points, and then I'll move on from that. By strange times, what I mean is that even before the meltdown of the financial markets, people were already becoming increasingly aware, and this is not just small not-for-profit organizations and community development organizations, but the global financial markets are becoming increasingly aware that the environment, obviously with global climate change going on, that the environment, that governance, and that social issues do indeed impact the portfolio performance that you have. And it is in that light that now we have 500 signatories in 36 countries managing $18 trillion who have signed the Principles for Responsible Investment, pledging to integrate environmental, social, and governance issues into all of their investment decisions. We're now looking south of the border at the US economy, which now has 1 out of every 9 professionally managed dollars in the socially responsible investment realm. And from 1995 to last year, we're able to grow their community investment assets from a pool of $4 billion to now today $24 billion. And that is an effort I would love to see duplicated here in Canada. In Canada, we see the community investment portion out of SRI assets are now at about $639 million. A smaller pool of that in community investing, but also an increasingly growing and an increasingly important pool. And when I say strange bedfellows, what I really mean is that it was hard for me to imagine 10 and 20 years ago, if you'd asked me who the largest organic food seller would be in North America, I would never have told you Walmart. As we look at who the biggest investors in alternative energy are, and in the green economy, certainly in the US, it is the large pension funds. It is some of the biggest organizations and some of the biggest monies. And so one of the things that we all have to face, and it is not an easy thing to face, is that we will be in meetings and working in collaboration on occasion with partners that we never imagined partnering with, where we have common missions and common goals that we did not anticipate, and where we won't share all of our goals, but we will at least share some. So in wrapping up, a couple of things I will share on the way out today. One is that for those of you that are operating intermediaries, and for those of you that are operating organizations that have financial challenges and go to pick financial partners, a couple of things that I would mention to you, kind of a quick hit of 4 or 5 things that we see, common mistakes or common things that are important if you're trying to get investment and lending dollars from the right partner. One of the things to think about because all of us will at some point need financial partners to do this work. So one of the biggest lessons that I brought away from my venture capital days is look for partners that you can go through bad times with, not partners you can go through good times with. So when you look for a bank, when you look for a credit union, everybody looks good when things look good. Think about the kind of relationship you want to have when times are bad, because times will be bad at some point. When you present your business plan to us or to another financial organization, one of the things to remember, and this is a quirk that is often forgotten by the mathematicians in the crowd, I think a business plan is important to have, but the reality is I look at a business plan and I have a conundrum. I'm supposed to fund your business with a grant or a loan or an investment based on you performing that business plan, but the realistic odds of the business plan happening are 1 in infinity. So the only thing I can possibly know when I sit down with you is the one thing in life that will never happen is the plan you just gave to me. And so you have to take that in reverse and think about that as well, because it means that since we both know your plan is not going to be your plan, what's going to happen if you sell more and the margins are skinnier? What's going to happen if you sell less? What's going to happen if somebody leaves in a tizzy? Right? Because that's the thing we have to work out. And too often we spend our time looking at the business plans and not enough time around what happens when the business plan does not happen. In both your world and mine, there's another conundrum, which is in my world, as an investor, I'm paid often to buy the biggest part of a company that I can for the least amount of dollars. And you as a social enterprise will come in, or a social venture, and say it is your job to raise the most amount of money for the least amount of dollars. So already we've been put in oppositional places. Well, that is a mistake. We cannot win with that model. I will say that again. We cannot win with that model. Because if we can't create deals where we can both be on the same side of the ruler, where our stakeholders and our communities and our employees and our investors and our managers can win if the same set of things happen, then we shouldn't be doing the investments to begin with. So I'm going to leave it at that today because I want to leave time for Q&A, but certainly I'm happy to answer questions as we go, and thanks again for having me.